What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Monte Poker, episode 8. This session is brought to you by Central Coast Casino out in Grover Beach, California. This session was an absolute grind fest. For those of you that are newer to poker and just getting into it, this session is a more accurate representation of how grindy cash games can be. We hit up a couple great hands at the end of the night, but a majority of it was absolutely dead. You're gonna see firsthand how much it sucks when you have great starting hands and zero action. Let's jump into it.
So the first hand of the night starts off with ace deuce suited. On the cutoff, we flop a gut shot and just check the answer to, because there was a limp pot. Somebody bet $6. I go ahead and call. We get there on the river. Our opponent bets for a little bit. We decide to raise him up and he does put in the call. So we scoop a $30 profit. Nothing huge, but you'll see it's a reoccurring theme tonight. Always nice to win the first one. Hand number 2 is slightly different. There was a $10 raise under the gun, 2 callers. So I decide to raise it up to 50. Then the opponent to my left ends up jamming for, I believe, around 110. The original raiser folded. One of the players in the middle decided to also go all in for less. So when the action is back over at me, it's going to cost me about $60 or so to potentially win over 200. That's a pretty big no-brainer on my part. So we go off to this flop 3 ways, which comes queen 7-7, 2 diamonds with a 5 of diamonds on the turn and a jack of spades on the river. I show my ace king and our opponent turns over ace queen. So he hits his 3 outer, and to make it worse, the other opponent also had ace queens. So one of his outs was burned. Yikes, we had them in rough shape and they both get there and chop up my money. It looks like it's going to be one of those sessions. This is a small pot, so we'll kind of speed through it. I look down at pocket jacks in the middle position. We have one customer here. The flop comes out a bunch of little cards, and luckily our opponent leads into us for 15 bucks. So we go ahead and just put in the call here. Nothing to be really worried about. 9 on the turn doesn't change too much on this board. Some straight potentials, but I don't think he's holding that. We go ahead and put in a call again. There's a clean king of clubs on the river. Then he checks it over to us. We just fire 20, which is his previous bet, and get called by who knows what, but we make $60 in this pot. And now comes the tilt factor. We look down at ace queen off, completely miss and lose a small pot, get dealt ace queen again, raise, and have everybody fold. Now we pick up a suited ace of the ace 9 variety. We hit top pair on a small board, heads up. Our opponent leads into us for 2 streets, gives up when a king is there. We flip over our card and my pair of 9s takes it. Slowly building our stack back up. We look at king queen suited. We raise pre-flop and then make a c-bet on the flop when we missed, and we take this one down. 10 minutes later, we pick up another suited king, this time of the king 10 variety. Completely missed the board, but then we end up picking up a 10 on the river. Pots have been anywhere between $10 to $25 all night as far as profit margins, but we're going to keep grinding it out. So now off to another small one. We have king 7 offsuit on the big blind. Otherwise, I would definitely not be in this pot. We hit a pair with the second nut flush draw, so we stick around when our opponent raises here. On the turn, we pick up a straight draw as well, but we completely whiff on the river, so we lost a little bit of money there. Been here for an hour at this point, but like, these are how all the pots are going, not just my pots. People just do not want to put money in the middle for some reason tonight. We took a hit off of that last hand trying to chase a draw, so then we get involved with 9-7 suited. I remember distinctly making the decision to start bluffing at hands. I completely whiffed this board, but an ace comes on the turn after I called the bet on the flop, so I decided to just raise the turn and then we actually get it through. Since everybody's playing so tight, I think I'm going to start playing a little bit more aggressively. Anytime I sense weakness, I'm going to just put big bets in the middle. Anytime we have a strong hand, I'm going to put big bets in the middle, and when we have an absolute monster, I'm just going to go for straight value. And of course, as soon as I make that decision, we limp into a pot here with ace jack suited. I wish I can say I'm surprised when I noticed that nobody raises here, but that's just the way it's been all night, as you have clearly seen. The flop comes out 10 of clubs, 9 of clubs, deuce of hearts here. Oh boy, we have an open-ended straight flush draw, all the outs in the world in our favor, so we're definitely going to bet small, try to build this pot up a little bit just in case we do hit our hand. So we bet $6 and we get 3 callers, well, 2 callers, 1 folds, and then the turn comes a 4 of spades. Doesn't really change much, but we're going to keep telling the story that we have a good hand here, so I'm going to raise to $20. We get 1 more customer, but the player at the end of the table ends up folding, but he folded his hand face up, not realizing somebody was still in, so we got some information there. Unfortunately, the river comes a total brick, and the screen was so bright that I could not see what the river was, but I know we bricked out here, else we we would have been betting, obviously. So we throw away our absolute monster draw because we did not get paid with it, unfortunately. I know some of you are thinking I should have bet the river, but I guarantee you this man was calling. We're going to speed run a few hands here. Once again, I pick up pocket tens, raise, and everybody folds. Oh, actually, I'm a liar. There was a hand in between all the speed running. So we pick up ace 5 of diamonds here on the cutoff. We lost a little bit of money between our last hand and this one, apparently probably whiffing a few flops. So we have $84 with a $10 raise pre-flop. We see a board that runs out 7 of hearts, jack of hearts, 10 of clubs. We don't really have anything here, so we're just going to go ahead and check the action through. Gets through to the turn, which brings us an 8 of clubs. Doesn't really improve our hand very much, but if we want to bluff at it, this is a pretty decent card that will add some equity to a lot of hands. Puts a 4-liner to a straight out there, and now a 3 of clubs shows up on the river. So now there's 3 to a flush, 4 to a straight. Our opponent checks over to us, and we go ahead and jam here for the remainder of our stack, and he somehow folds a set. Wow, that is insane. I was expecting him to just have 1 pair, not 3 of a kind. I'm honestly shocked that he folded that, considering how little I had behind. Now we're back to the speed run in here. So I look down at ace king suited. I end up raising to 12 pre-flop. We get 1 customer. I hit top pair with the nut flush draw, but unfortunately no action. This next one is absolutely huge. We are on the big blind. The action folds over to the small blind, who offers a chop. And of course I always say yes. And then we look down at aces. Fantastic. This is a perfect depiction of how tonight's been freaking going, but you can't really help it. Sometimes you just have those nights and you have to get through them. Moving on to the next one, I straddled for $8 on the button with 120 behind, and the action folds over to the person to my right, who raises to 20. I look down at queen 10 offsuit, and normally this is just a fold for me, but since we already have 8 in there, I'm going to go ahead and put in the call. I also know the player to my right is really tight, so I expect them to have a big ace here, but there's a lot of Broadway cards on this flop that'll give me some straight outs, and I don't expect them to continue unless they actually hit. And then we end up seeing a 10 high board. I don't think our opponent has ace 10, so I decided to just jam here for 108 into 60. It's a bit of an over bet, but I'm basically just trying to get them out of this pot and not see any Broadway cards. And if they are on the flush draw, I want them to pay the maximum for it. So they both fold. I end up showing them the 10 just to let them know that I'm not full of it, because I want them to believe me when I am full of it. Gotta set them up for later. Okay, so this hand brings us king 10 of diamonds on the small blind. We end up going off to a flop that comes out king 10 7 with an ace on the turn. Our opponent fires, and then we raise them and they fold. They told me he just had ace 8, so he thought that I had him out kick. Bit of an overplay on my part, but that board was too wet for comfort. It's been about 2 hours into the session, and we've been grinding it out, trying to get back to our original $200. We've had some big hands, but haven't made any money with them, and we seem to keep throwing away our profit, either chasing or just, you know, getting into bad situations. I'm starting to fall asleep at this point, but you know, we have not been here long enough to go home yet. I like to play for about 5-6 hours at the minimum to see what happens, because there's just a lot of variance in poker and anything can happen over the course of a session. So we're just going to keep with our plan. We have about $200 now in the small blind when we look down at pocket 8s. There's a $10 open from one of the middle position players, and then 1 called on the button. I could go for either raising or just calling here. Considering how many people are in the hand, I don't want to raise to the point where we won't get any value, but I also don't want to keep it small enough that we have too many people involved. So I'm just going to go ahead and put in the call here, and we instantly get rewarded with flopping a set on a rainbow board. There's not really much to do here. I go ahead and just check it over, and luckily the pre-flop aggressor decides to make a substantial bet. So I go ahead and just put in a call. With him betting $80 here, I don't really see a reason for us to have to raise him on this board texture. Unless he has kings, there's nothing we're really losing to. The turn brings us a knight of spades, which connects with the 8, but I'm not putting him on the 8. I'm assuming he has a king, so we check it one more time. And just in case he got worried that we called that $80 bet here, I'm going to go ahead and try to bet an amount that he won't fold with top pair, top kicker. Hopefully that's what he has here. So I fire out for $80 again. He instantly says call. I show him that we rivered a boat, and he shows us king 10 offsuit. Absolutely great hand. Finally caught a good size one that that is going to push us over our original buy-in. The grind was worth it. Our next hand brings us to middle position with 6-8 suited with 337 in the stack here. We end up flopping trips on a board with 2 spades. I go ahead and check this over to the opponents. Everybody limped in, so there's a good chance people have something that's worth betting on this flop here. So I go ahead and rebump this up after my neighbor raises to 15 and there's one caller in the middle. This is a bit of a massive overbet here, but the player that is sitting in seat 1 has been calling these massive bets and then just folding on the turn for the last 30 minutes or so. He seems like he might be a newer player because I haven't been able to make sense of any of the plays he's made up until this point, and I'm very excited when he starts reaching for some chips and then puts them in the middle. So the dealer counts it out, makes sure everything is there, and then throws out the turn, which brings us a 4 of spades. I do not like this card, but the player only has about $40 behind, so I just rip it all in anyway. We fade the snap call, which is really good news. I'm not sure what he called with, if not the flush draw. I don't think he has the 8. Maybe he just floated with 2 overcards, but I don't know what he thinks I'm holding after I re-raised their bets and the call. It's an extremely strong line to take, but he ends up folding it anyway, and we scoop $158 in profit in that hand. So we're sitting with about 425 in our stack currently. We already put 20 in the middle, so we started the hand with 445. The player on the button decides to raise us to 50. Blind gets out of the way and everybody else was already gone. I say one time and call the extra 30, and then the villain offers to just run the board out. He's been really friendly all night. We've been having great conversations, and it seems like he was just trying to avoid getting into a hand with each other since we got along so well. I normally don't do this, but we had already won 2 or 3 flips with him earlier today, so I said sure, and we run out clean. We end up just chopping it, and I think the house is the only person that made money in that hand. It is now 1026. We have 380 in the stack. We have an open for $15. We look down at ace king suited on the button, so we decide to rebump this up. This seems to be a reoccurring theme tonight where we're 3-betting people and they're just giving up, but I like free money. At this point in the night, I had already decided to get up and go, and my ride was outside, currently waiting for me. I looked down at king 6 of clubs on the button. It was a $6 under the gun straddle, and almost the entire table limped in. Somebody bet $15 on the flop, and that narrowed down the field significantly. And then we catch a full house on the turn. At this point, there's 2 of us left in the hand. The small blind checked, the big blind decided to bet 50, and then we called that 50. Going off to the river here, it brings us in ace of diamonds. Our opponent leads out for $50 here. It seems like he's going for value, so I decide to jam on him. He's got maybe 120 behind, so I don't see how he would fold this if he does have trips with a good kicker. He enters the tank for quite a bit and just says that sucks while up and downing me. He's looking over at my stack to see how much I have behind, and then he ends up folding. Lets me know that I probably have him out kicked, and I tell him I absolutely do because my kicker is actually a boat. He had king 8, so I don't think he was gonna call the jam. May have called the min click if we just went to 100, but the jam was only 20 more, so maybe not.
And there you have it. Like I mentioned before, the night was an absolute grind fest. We lost a good amount of money at the start of the session with that ace king hand, and it took forever for us to make it back. We were sitting there for hours, and at the end of the night, we finally got our big hits. Now, this doesn't always happen. Sometimes you end up leaving down a little bit, or barely breaking even, maybe up $20 or $30, but it's much nicer when you leave with the profit. Let's go over our numbers. All right, so we played a couple sessions between last vlog and this vlog, so I'm gonna blur the ones we haven't gotten to yet, but we will break down the ones that we did do. February 2nd was our last vlog when we were down 490. On February 3rd, we went to Central Coast Casino, profited 900. On February 4th, we played 1-2 at the Shoe Mash and made $73. Also on the 4th, we played for another 2.5 hours and lost 10. Oh, I remember what happened that day. There was really bad rainstorm. We tried to leave at like the peak of the storm and could not leave the casino. So we went back, ended up at the $63 profit that day. And I'm pretty sure the power went out at our house, which is the only reason I was there, which explains why I was playing 1-2. I think I was tired from the session before and didn't want to play poker that day. So we just played bingo poker. And then on the 17th, which is this session, we made $380. So real quick, for the third, we bought in for $200, cashed out $1,100. Session went from 8 p.m. until almost 1 in the morning, which is why I was tired the following day. The shoe mash 7, we were in for 70, cashed out 143 after almost 2 hours. Then when we sat down again at 4, we probably bought in a couple times because we were in for 220, cashed out 210. And then on this day's session, we bought in once for 200, cashed out 580. And here's what the graph looks like. So it's looking significantly better. We took a fat dip and then climbed right back up, and we're at 2159. Our highest peak to date has been 2306. So we're only $200 away from our highest point. And our total profit slash loss since we started the vlog is $2,159, which is the top of the graph. So I already said it. All right, that's all I have for you. Thank you all for stopping by as per usual. Thank you for the likes and comments. And if you're new to the channel and made it this far into the video, you know what to do with that subscribe button. Take it easy, and I'll see you all next week.